Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Melissa Ridgen. It was an NHL hockey game like you've never seen before. For the first time, a game was broadcast live on national TV in Plains Cree. APTN and Sportsnet teamed up for the matchup between the Montreal Canadiens and the Carolina Hurricanes in a game that did not disappoint. With more from behind the scenes, here's Dennis Ward.
4, 3, with the Association of the National 1, and go blue.
This was the start of a milestone moment in Canadian television history. Sportsnet and APTN teaming up to deliver the first ever NHL game broadcast live on TV in Plains Cree. For play-by-play announcer Clarence Iron, it was a lifelong dream fulfilled.
It happened. My dream came true. But to call it in Cree, I never thought. I thought I'd do it in English because I called a lot of English hockey games before. But to do the Cree, even myself sometimes I amaze myself.
Iron has long been recognized as one of the Cree voices of hockey, but he hopes this historic moment opens the doors for the next generation too. So does studio host Earl Wood, who was beaming with excitement throughout the game between the Montreal Canadiens and the Carolina Hurricanes.
I want to invite all those young people out there, no matter where you are, to take it upon yourself to gain an interest in our language and to utilize it. It has a place in this modern day society and can take you anywhere you want to go. Anywhere you want to go, your language will take you there.
The game was pure entertainment on and off the ice, with the Hurricanes playing spoilers for Canadiens fans in a 2-1 overtime win in a game with playoff implications. Even if you didn't understand a word, you could feel the excitement in the call. Sportsnet's executive producer of special events was on hand for the groundbreaking partnership.
That was exciting tonight. It really was, and to see some of the tweets that were being put out on social media was pretty exciting. And to hear you guys call it the way you did, it was entertaining and really fun to listen to.
While some may have tuned in initially for the novelty, many stuck around because it was so exciting to watch. An important game for Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples, says Jason Chamakis.
The only thing that I can think of right now is wow. To be part of something that amazing, to have our languages broadcast into living rooms all across Canada, and to have people who don't understand the language hear how beautiful our Cree language sounds. It's amazing to be a part of.
Chamakis hopes the airing of this game is about more than just hockey.
I think we want everybody to get along and to care about one another, because I see a disconnect. And through something like this, our hope is that we build these bridges between people. That's what I'm hoping for, that this will lead to something good, something positive. Miuwi taskito, and we say in Cree, which is sharing the land together in a good way.
Studio analyst and former NHLer John Chabot says this can't just be a one-off.
The NHL has done a great job in reaching out to our new Canadians, but they've never really reached out to our pre-Canadians. And this is something that was a long time coming.
And it may not be a one-off. Talks are underway in the hopes of airing more games next season on APTN in different Indigenous languages. Dennis Ward, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
What an experience to hear the game called in Cree. Clarence Iron from Canoe Lake First Nation in Saskatchewan truly made everything come alive with his Cree play-by-play. Here's more from Iron, as well as highlights of last night's goals.
I'm very honored to do it because, I've always had a dream, maybe one day I could be calling an NHL game.
Samoa Hill. No. All right, here we come sa Minapia Magawa. Aho. McKinnigan at Williams, Justin Williams. People na meet
But to call it in Cree, I never thought I'd do it in English, because I called a lot of English hockey games before. But to do the Cree, you know, even myself, sometimes I amaze myself.
Michael Ferland, so Carey Price, dan situ sa patap, madmago, ta Trevor Van Riemsdyk, Iminogosque, si Martnock. Ano, so Kula, do ko kapsit ni we pahuwi ko si Gallagher, magoy ko Gallagher. Gallagher, we ko tapipik, di ko yan, tam si Piwan Mis ka na, si Katisi na waswil, ego ti ko agami, kitagam, ego tana, nigan pa piste ko heo! Nintano piaksap kastagwayon. Kanawin tako si Piwan Mis ka na, tigwi pahigi, wak piwas kagut, sinigutin na pagista ko, Martnock, ego tataga ko ipes ka will siya, maga Martnock, kuya pumunta ko, asa minigutan, piste ko heo! Ego tiyo si Piwan Mis ka na, sik, ego uta, Trevor. Max Domi pa, piatagit siya, kanini sui pa, muyo ko ti, magawi ko ta, Gallagher, nakpasok yung sinugutawan, humago, kago, tasas, piste ko heo! Iyago, wagagiyahay mo, huyaktap nuwawihay, Andre Svechnikov, imaskas, tuite ko nan, hinapagoan sa Andres.
The historic game was, not surprisingly, a hot topic on social media, trending on Twitter and Facebook. Here are some of the reactions from last night's match. Janice Lynn Favel captured this heartwarming picture of her cookum proudly watching the game in Cree from her living room. Shannon Fant from Twitter says, my dad would have been proud of the Cree language being spoken at tonight's hockey game. He would have gotten a kick out of it. Gary Laboucan from Facebook says, amazing, simply amazing. Watched the game with my children and they loved it as much as I did. I love hearing our language spoken with such passion, love, and laughter. And Derek Morin on Twitter says, 30 minutes of goosebumps and maybe a few happy tears watching hometown hockey. And Crystal Hicks says, I will never forget watching this with my boy and feeling such pride and honor. When we do it again, hopefully we do it with some Stompin' Tom hockey song in whatever Indigenous language we're going to do it in next time. Metis 60 Scoop survivors left out of the government settlement met in Manitoba this past weekend. We've got that story after the break, but first here's tomorrow's weather forecast. To the east coast, we've got -1s for Fredericton, Charlottetown, and Halifax. -16 in Inukjuak, -14 in Snow and Kujawak. Shubugaboo -6 and sunshine 1 in Val-d'Or. 2 for North Bay, 3s for Ottawa, Peterborough. 1 and rain in Big Trout Lake, 3s for Wawa, Timmins. 6 in God's Lake and some cloud, Pucktawagan's rain and 7. 6 and rain for Princess Harbor, Barons River. 8 in Gimli, snowy and cloudy. 13 and a mix of sun and cloud in Saskatoon, and 14 a mix of sun and cloud in Regina. 3 mostly sunny but a bit of cloud up in Stony Rapids. 9 and a mix of sun and cloud in La Ronge. Welcome back. The opposition was calling on the Prime Minister over the weekend to expand the waiver for former Attorney General Jody Wilson-Raybould in the SNC-Lavalin affair. Justin Trudeau has said the government took unprecedented steps of letting her testify about whether she felt pressured over the prosecution of the Quebec company. Wilson-Raybould says she'll submit texts, emails, and other evidence to the House Justice Committee, even though it's ended hearings. The Deputy Conservative leader had a few words about that on CTV's Question Period.
I think it's kind of interesting that Jody Wilson-Raybould's now going to submit evidence in the form of written submissions, and there's no Justice Committee to test her on the evidence because they decided they had heard enough, even though they were told that Jody Wilson-Raybould wanted to come back and say some more. So now we have a very unique situation where the evidence is going to come in, no ability to test it, no ability to have a conversation about it, and we'll just, I guess, receive it, and the world will continue to move on. Let's just rip the Band-Aid off. Let's get this done, bring them in, have a conversation, lift the waivers, relieve them of their oaths, get it done.
And CTV News is reporting that the relationship between Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his former Attorney General Jody Wilson-Raybould, quote, began to sour well before the SNC-Lavalin saga last fall. The issue was over a pick of a judge to sit on the Supreme Court of Canada. Sources say back in 2017, when former Justice Beverly McLaughlin retired, Trudeau disagreed with Wilson-Raybould's recommendation to replace her. Wilson-Raybould wanted Manitoba Justice Glenn Joyal. The Prime Minister eventually picked Sheila Martin. New information suggests Trudeau was concerned with some of Joyal's views and whether he would protect particular rights that aren't enshrined in the Constitution, such as LGBTQ rights. The disagreement over the appointment casts new light on the erosion between their relationship a year before cabinet discussions about a plea deal for SNC-Lavalin. Jody Wilson-Raybould has denied there was any conflict, stressing the selection of a new Supreme Court judge is typically a confidential conversation and ultimately the decision of the Prime Minister. Métis survivors of the Sixties Scoop met with fellow survivors this weekend in Winnipeg to share their stories and talk about reconciliation. Ashley Branson spoke with one survivor who didn't go.
Refused to attend.
This is Mark Head. He was born in La Pas, Manitoba, but ended up living in Brooks County, Texas.
Like I said, the youngest picture I have of myself on record, and that's from '72.
Head says this is the photo the government used to take him across the border all those years ago. Head was one of the thousands of Indigenous children from across Canada taken from their families and adopted out during the 60s Scoop, an era that spans the decades from the 1950s to the 1990s. Head says being scooped cost him dearly.
My mother, my father, my paternal and maternal grandparents all passed away while I was in care. I literally lost all of that.
He was going to go to the survivors gathering but decided against it. David Chartrand is president of the Manitoba Metis Federation. His organization organized the event. He wanted to hear from survivors if they thought they needed to heal from being scooped.
We'd be asking our people, like, what's the basis of what you would feel would help the healing, would help the change for the next generation.
But Head says his personal healing took place many years ago. This type of action wouldn't help him.
For most of us, bringing it up again and over again, it doesn't have that effect of healing. It really doesn't.
Last year, a federal judge approved an $875 million settlement for about 20,000 60 Scoop survivors, but not with the Métis Nation. Mark Head shares how he felt when he heard the news.
The words that don't come to me to describe what it felt was. Most recently, when I was speaking with a friend, it was like a kick in the face. You know, to me, it was even worse than that.
Nonetheless, Chartrand wants to correct the wrongs from the past.
And we need to do things right, and we need to correct those wrongs. We believe that's the pathway, but the more important part for us is we want to hear from the people themselves.
Ashley Branson, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
In fact,
the president of the Manitoba Metis Federation's love of the Liberal government continues, as David Chartrand told Dennis Ward he's a fan of what's in last week's pre-election federal budget. Here's why.
President Chartrand, thanks for joining us. I think it's safe to say you're a huge fan of this government and this budget, which includes more than $500 million for funding for the Métis Nation. Is this the most important budget you've ever seen?
Well, let me put it this way, Dennis. You know, you said I'm a huge fan of this government and these budgets, and who would not be if you're Indigenous in this country? This is the first time in our history, and I've been in politics for over 30 years, and I've never seen a prime minister stretch their political capital so far for Indigenous peoples, and making sure reconciliation is true and it's real. We see it budget after budget after budget. So it is very clear that this prime minister wants to fix the wrongs of the past and make the future brighter for all of us as Indigenous people. So this budget, I think, is one again where I can give it an applause. It actually hits very clearly to our young people regarding post-secondary education. It helps in languages, helps in our economic capital investments. It makes it very clear. One big one for me is the veterans, setting aside $30 million for a trust that will be in place for the veterans. So if you look at overall, I think there's a mini sprinkling of aspects for all Indigenous people, and I can't say enough that we finally have a government that's really respecting the Indigenous people in this country and playing an even play field for all of us.
One of the key pieces of legislation the Liberals are trying to get passed before this coming election is the child welfare legislation, which the Metis Federation of Manitoba and others have accused the opposition parties of holding up. Some Indigenous leaders have expressed concerns over the legislation and the lack of funding attached. Is this bill doomed?
No, I believe this bill has definitely strong legs yet to move forward. I know that as we move and progress through the process, right now you can see what the Conservatives are doing. They're just doing all types of chaotic events inside. I was there in the budget when they were slamming their tables like children, and you couldn't even hear the budget being spoken of. And if we did as Indigenous people, they tell us we're children and I have no right to self-government. But if you look at it from the perspective, I think this child welfare legislation is a great beginning. It really sets the stage way for us as we move forward as Indigenous governments, both First Nation, Inuit, and the Métis Nation. As we move forward in the self-government process, this legislation will smoothly find itself within our own government. So I believe it has strong legs. It's unfortunate that the Conservatives are holding up this process, and they should be showing support to this legislation. But right now, it's not about that. It's about them getting elected, and we're definitely not up in their priority list right now.
President Chartrand, we'll have to leave it there. Appreciate you taking some time for us.
Thank you very much, Dennis.
The Port Alberni Friendship Centre on Vancouver Island welcomed 900 youth delegates at BC's annual Gathering of Voices. The event attracts Indigenous youth from ages 14 to 24 from all across Canada. Laurie Hamlin was there.
I like them to walk away from my field.
Timmy Masso from Tloquit First Nation on Vancouver Island is one of 900 youth delegates participating in this year's Gathering of Voices event. GOV, as it's called, is an Indigenous youth leadership program organized by the BC Association of Aboriginal Friendship Centres. And this year, the Port Alberni Friendship Centre is hosting the big event. The week-long event attracts delegates ages 14 to 24 and is so popular that registration reached its limit just 13 minutes after opening.
I think it was just amazing that I made it, and I was also actually invited to come.
Youth from all across Canada participate in workshops and listen to speakers that will help them explore, learn, and engage with Indigenous culture and their peers.
Today I'm actually doing the talent show, so I have a workshop based on that. Talent show workshop is them just trying to prep you for going up on stage, and so you don't kind of freak out when you get up there in front of a crowd of 900 people.
This year is Masso's third time at GOV. He says he not only enjoys all the fun workshops, but values the relationships he makes.
The friendships that come out of this gathering is really wonderful.
Most of the delegates come back year after year, but Cassandra Woods, the event's coordinator, says there were many new faces this year.
It's a really important event for these youth. For some of them, it's the first time that they've been away from home. It's the first time that they've been at a gathering with 900 other Indigenous youth, and it's really a really powerful, space to be in.
Genevieve Elliott flew from Fort St. John in northeastern BC to attend GOV for the second time.
I want to continue coming to GOV. Every time I learn something new, and I feel like I can grow and learn from every GOV experience. Being here was pretty awesome.
Elliot isn't Indigenous, but she says she takes what she learns from the event and brings it back to share with her peers at the Fort St. John Friendship Society.
Being here, I've really realized that I want to be in these workshops and I want to help out and really be a leader. It's brought a lot of my leadership skills out, and that's what I want to continue doing.
Laurie Hamlin, APTN National News, Port Alberni.
It's time for another break, but we've got more news to come, so stay with us. And here's the rest of tomorrow's weather where you live.
Off to northern Alberta. We've got 10 and sunshine in Fort McMurray, 5 and sunny and high level. 12 and rain in Calgary, 18 sunshine in Medicine Hat. 9 and rain in Tofino, 11 for Vancouver and Victoria and rain. 6 and rain in Dease Lake, 5 and rain in Prince George. Pleasant City is cloudy and 7. Whitehorse is cloudy and 7 as well. 7 and sunshine in Norman Wells, -1 in Yellowknife, sunshine. Tuckasit at -6 with a mix of sun and clouds. Sax Harbor clear and -21. Baker Lake is snowing at -9. Chesterfield snow -11. Resolute in at -23 and snow, -14 in Cape Dorset, -17 with clear skies in Pangertung.
Welcome back. A new production by celebrated Wolastoqey artist Natalie Sapier is hitting a Winnipeg stage. Finding Wolastoq Voice is a story of one young woman's journey of awakening and transformation. Here's Brittany Hobson with more on that.
She really builds the set as the story goes.
Natalie Sapier is celebrating the 1-year anniversary of her first theatre show with a run of performances at Winnipeg's Prairie Theatre Exchange. The production is called Finding Wolastoq Voice.
It's about healing, it's about family, it's about community, it's about trauma, and it's about how do we carry our Indigenous teachings today in this fast-growing modern world.
Sapier is Wolastoqey from Tobique First Nation in New Brunswick. After years of working as a painter and musician, she yearned for a new way to share her community's stories.
I wanted the audience to feel that emotion, that hunger for our language, that hunger to carry these teachings.
But I am Chitalo. You are to us.
The piece uses dance, theater, and music to tell the story of a young Indigenous girl searching for herself and using the voices of her ancestors to find her own. It's based off of Sapier's own experiences. She says the process has been a healing experience.
I think I get emotional because it's still happening. It's still happening, and I think that the story has to be shared. These stories have to be shared, because these things are still happening.
Sapier worked with Indigenous artists Aria Evans and Andy Morrow to bring the production to life. It was important for her to elevate their work.
My goal is to help bring those stories to life at home, to help others, those dancers and those musicians, to bring their stories to life also. That's my dream.
Finding Wolastoq Voice runs until March 31st at the Prairie Theatre Exchange.
I am Indian enough. I am here. I'm awake now. I remember who I am.
Brittany Hobson, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
That's your news for this Monday. Be sure to check out aptnnews.ca for anything you might have missed in recent days. I'm Melissa Ridgen. Have a great night, and I'll see you back here tomorrow.